Hi, everybody. We're going to give it another minute for Dan to get here, and then we'll get started. Thanks. All right, looks like we're all here. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone, to the board meeting for the Desert Marigold School Board of Directors, officially known as the Valley of the Sun Waldorf Education Association. I am Gregory Schneider. I'm the board president, and we'll say the opening verse and then go around and introduce the rest of ourselves. So that verse is, "The true aim of education is to awaken real powers of perception and judgment in relation to life and living, for only such an awakening can lead to true freedom." That's Rudolf Steiner. So welcome again, everybody. I see we have 11 attendees this evening. So welcome to you all. We're happy to have you here. Again, I'm Gregory Schneider. I'm the board president, and let's go around and introduce ourselves, starting with April.
April Sauer, board secretary.
Danielle.
Hi, good evening. Danielle Martinez, board member.
Thank you, Danielle. Mr. Tanner.
John Tanner, board member.
And Dan.
Dan Franks, board treasurer.
Thank you. And Frank.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm Frank Maurizio, the executive director.
Perfect. All right. So tonight's agenda is fairly light as far as our agendas go. So we've got some budgetary issues to discuss. We'll hear an update from Frank. We'll talk about anything related to COVID-19 that we need to talk about. We'll approve the minutes of our previous meetings, talk about the board candidate interviewing process, and talk about our board meeting calendar for the rest of the year and for the rest of this fiscal year and for the next school year. So with that said, we got a revised budget for the remainder of this school year, which was something that we had to submit because we overestimated the number of students that we were going to have enrolled for the average daily membership by, I think it was about 8 students. Is that right, Frank? We, as budgeted based on 258, I think, and we ended up having 249.
That is correct.
So Frank has been working diligently with Priscilla and then Monique, her successor at Aspire, to come up with that budget. Frank, do you want to fill us in on the details there?
Yes. Well, as you know, we talked a couple of weeks ago because I was concerned that there was a big deficit coming, and we caught some things. Greg, you pointed some things out, so I talked with Monique about those things, and I was able to move some monies that should have been spent on special ed people and situations, and in moving that around, that moved to the MOE, which is a separate account, and it freed up some other monies. I did freeze some supply budgets to get under back in the black, and so it went from, I want to say, 17,000 in the black 2 weeks ago to 23,000 in the black, which is all good. We're in the black, and that is a projection through June. Of course, that projects and takes into account some equalization money that we get each month that we weren't expecting some extra monies this month, but our attendance has been up. So we got some extra money because kids were coming back to school and not missing as much. And so we are certainly hoping that will continue, because if all of a sudden people stop coming to school, that money could shrink per month. And we certainly are crossing our fingers that that does not happen. We would love another equalization payment next month, just like this month's, so we can inch that up just a little bit more before July 1st.
Got it. Questions from the other board members about the revised budget?
I do have a couple of questions, but my first question is, I'm not familiar with MOE. What is that abbreviation?
Danielle, I'm having a really hard time hearing you. I don't know if anyone else is.
Is that a little better?
Yeah.
MOE, I'm not familiar. What does that stand for?
MOE is the account that, depending on our numbers of special ed students and which type of special ed students, because you get different dollar amounts for someone who might have a reading disability or autism. And those dollar amounts we are supposed to show are being spent on special ed. For instance, we're not supposed to take that money and buy a lawnmower with it. We're not supposed to take that money and pay the executive director's salary with it. It gets tracked to make sure we are spending it in special ed. And we had to move some things around that we didn't realize had happened at the beginning of the year, because that was happening. Of course, it all matters that by the time the MOE gets approved, and Greg, you and I have been emailing that stuff back and forth, we were able to fix it all for the end of the year. And so we are now in compliance again. But Monique and I were able to catch those things before we either got in trouble or they say, give us those special ed monies back, which they have every right to do if we're not spending it on special ed.
And so MOE stands for?
I don't know the answer to that. April, you're an ex-special ed teacher. Do you know the answer to that?
No, I'm not an ex-special ed teacher, but I do not know that abbreviation.
I really don't know. That was the first time in my 34 years I had heard MOE. Priscilla explained the account to me, which I knew about, but I never knew it was called MOE.
Okay. Thank you. That was the only question I had on the MOE. The other thing on the budget that jumped out at me in my banker shoes are bank late fees, but I'll have to email Monique to find out why, if those are still being generated, if those were just from past accounting, or if there's something we can be doing about that. And that was line item 6830. And there were, on 2600, Priscilla was emailing me a breakdown of what goes in those categories, but I didn't see that with this report. So I didn't get a breakdown of the total amount on what is included in 2600 operations / maintenance of plant services. I also didn't get a breakdown of line item 100, regular education. And then I had a question on her totaling. She's got a grand total, and then she has less depreciation. So total expense, less depreciation. And then it looks like she put in total expenses excluding depreciation. So I'm wondering if she deducted that twice. 'Cause when I did the math, it looked like it was deducted twice.
Danielle, if you email me what you just said, I will call Monique tomorrow with a specific question about that. I didn't catch that it might have been deducted twice, but I'd like to bring it to her attention to see what she said.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then my last question was around the percentage of the increase. The classroom site projects, that was an 18% increase. Just curious on what that included, as well as the federal projects, because those were both huge increases by percentage.
I have not asked her that either. I don't know what would entail inside that line. So if you email me that as well, I will get follow up and I'll get it out to all the board members as to what her answer is. Someone brought up depreciation. I really don't understand depreciation from the standpoint of who decides how much something has depreciated. No one seems to have an answer for me on that. I don't know if Dan or Greg, or if you're familiar with that and why that is.
It's from what I understand, and Danielle, you may know more than I do on this, but it's a way of accounting for the loss in value of things that are deteriorating over time, even though you're not currently incurring money to fix and repair them. So, it's like the buildings are going to deteriorate over time, and normally it's like in a for-profit corporation, it would be a tax deduction, because you would use the depreciation to say, well, I get to deduct this from my net income because I'm going to have to account for fixing all this stuff eventually or replacing it. It makes a lot less sense to me in the nonprofit context, where we don't pay taxes and we're not incurring the expense, and then it makes us look a little less financially secure than I think we really are. But Danielle, any other thoughts on that?
That's a very accurate answer. It would depend on what's included, if it's property, if it's buildings, if it's inventory, anything of value. You're absolutely right with the tax deduction for a profit company.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how Monique has calculated it.
Gregory, when we made that budget, Priscilla went over all of that, and she had the breakdown of what those were. I'm sure it's in our documents that we have from previous meetings, and because I remember specifically talking about what that entailed. Because at first I was like, wait, what are they talking about? But your definition, like, I remember that immediately, that we had a lot of discussions about that.
Yeah, I'll have to look back at my notes. And Danielle, to your point about depreciation being included or deducted twice.
It looks like it's deducted twice in that last page.
On at least on the support spreadsheet she sent, I'm not sure which one you're looking at. I'm looking at the revised budget support Excel spreadsheet. I see that she has a listing of total expenses, and then she takes the depreciation out of the total expenses. And then she has a line item for revenue, and then she says total expenses excluding depreciation, which is the same matching number from above.
It's not, it's the deducted amount.
Right, because the expenses excluding depreciation would be it's like 2.7 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not including the depreciation expense in that, then it's 2.7. If you include the depreciation expense, would be 2.8.
But she didn't say including. She said less depreciation and then the same figure excluding depreciation, and then she takes it back off. Less depreciation, so it's in there twice.
Yeah, maybe we're just reading it differently. It seems like she takes it out and then puts it back in, but it's like at one, but it looks weird because one time it's expensive and one time, I don't know, I'm not explaining it well, but we should ask Monique.
Is she in this Thursday or next Thursday?
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday? Okay.
I have one more question. I don't want to sound ignorant, but all of our homes have appreciated this year by 10 to 12%. How come our site doesn't show appreciation? It's got to be worth an awful lot. How is it showing depreciation?
Let's see. Where is that? Are you just talking about the overall depreciation expense?
Yeah, I'm just talking about, I keep seeing that they account for depreciation of our facility, of the assets we have, when everything else around us is going up in price. Wouldn't our actual school site be going up in value as well?
In theory, yes, that's correct. From an accounting perspective, you normally only look at the cost basis of what it costs you to acquire it, and then how much is it going to cost you to replace it. So it's like you're budgeting in that cost of replacing it rather than looking at appreciated value of the asset. And normally you do that for tax reasons. And you wouldn't look at the new value until you actually sold it, and then you would pay the difference between, you would pay taxes on the difference between your cost basis and the selling price, minus any deductions you have and that sort of thing. And that's when you would figure out.
I always wondered. I just wondered why. It almost sounds like we might have the ability to borrow more because our value might be higher, but it still counts as depreciation in real terms.
Yeah, and I think what would happen if we were to say we were to like refinance the loans and get a totally new amount. Say we wanted to do a cash out refi and get a few $100,000 in cash to do some capital improvement projects and that sort of thing. We'd have to check with Monique, but I think that you might adjust the capital cost of that in your accounting, and then that would change the depreciation expense because now you've readjusted your cost of having this property.
All right. Well, thank you. I didn't want to take up too much time on that. I just was unsure.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of this makes sense in a for-profit situation where you're actually paying taxes. It sort of makes sense here because it forces you to say, okay, at some point we're going to have to spend money to fix this stuff. So we need to account for that cost. And trying to force you to be very forward-looking. But then from a budget standpoint, it makes it look like you're barely scraping by. All right, so let's see. Monique said that this is due back to the state by May 15th, I think she said, is when we need to approve it and sign it. Let me double check your email. Yeah, May 15th. So since we have some questions and we've got, I think, 2 more board meetings between now and May 15th, well, let's get those questions answered, and then we can take this up again at the next meeting.
If any of you have other questions you didn't bring up now, just email me, and I'm planning on calling Monique tomorrow. So I will get all your answers and get them back to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. So that takes us to an enrollment update. How are things looking currently and for next year?
Well, I think I updated everybody today. I sent you an email from Crystal, and I think Crystal also sent you something. But we are at 262 today, which is up about 25 from December. But that does not include the students enrolled in the private and in kindergarten. So it's 287 with all of those today. For next year, we are at 287 plus 32 more enrollment packets are still out, and they've been returned between 40 and 70% completed. So if we got 32 more students in, obviously we'd be about 307, 308. The only thing while I'm happy with those numbers, I'd really like to see more high school, because we're filled up at the elementary. We just are. I think there's one grade that could take a couple more. I want to say that's fourth grade. The rest were really at limits. It's high school that I still have room. You know, I want to say we're between 12 and 16 in each class, except for the senior class. That's down to 11. And remember, most students don't transfer in their senior year. They stay wherever they are their senior year. So if we're going to have growth, it's either going to be because someone moved here from out of state who wants a Waldorf school, or someone enrolls in 9th or 10th grade with a couple years ahead of them. But that's how it looks so far. And again, I'm not totally unhappy with that. Those are good numbers. If that comes to fruition, that will increase our per pupil amount that we get from the state, which would be really good.
Well, good. It's nice to hear. It seems every time we talk about this, it's a little bit better and a little bit better. So kudos to you and to Crystal. Thanks for doing that work.
Thank you.
Frank, we got the short enrollment update in your board report, but I didn't see anything from Crystal or from you. So please check on that. If I don't know if anyone else got those, but I didn't receive them, and I'd love to see that information.
Did the rest of you get my board report with those numbers in it? And you did, April, or you did not?
I did. I got your board report, but you said we got something from Crystal. Is that something separate?
I think Crystal tells me she just sends something. I don't know if she sends it to all of you or just Gregory.
Yeah, I didn't get it. Was it today? I haven't gotten anything from her recently.
Okay, she knew today was the board meeting because she rushed to get me this information so I could send it to you. But I will talk to her in the morning and see why it wasn't sent. I know she likes to do a more detailed one for the board usually. So
yeah, and we're used to seeing those, so I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that.
Okay.
And Frank, I wanted to mention a couple of things. I wanted to send a thank you for the high school info night. I wasn't able to attend live, but thank you for the recording and for all the teachers who worked on that. We really enjoyed it and watched it as a family. And is there some buddy system going on? Are any of the teachers actively going in to give an intro on the high school to 6th, 7th, and 8th?
We are actually talking about bringing the 8th graders over so they would meet the teachers, maybe shadow for a day. They haven't planned it out yet because we're trying to get through testing. As you know, we're in the first week of testing, and it's going well, but it's very stressful. Everybody's just trying to do it perfectly so nothing goes awry. So I want to say I had a meeting last week with them, and it is in the plans. They just haven't picked the date as to when they're going to do that yet. And of course, they want to coordinate with the 8th grade teacher so we're not interrupting something that could be going on in her curriculum. So they want to pick an appropriate date, and they will be getting 8th grade involved.
I'd like to see 6th and 7th included if possible.
Okay, I will tell them that. I know they didn't focus on that. They were focused on the immediate ones who would be meeting. That could be your science teacher next year. That's your math teacher next year, that type of thing. But I'll talk with them about that.
All right. Unless there's anything else on enrollment, let's move along to our next topic for the evening, which are taking a look at these fundraising options that Danielle was good enough to shepherd for us. So Danielle, do you want to walk us through each of these options and give us your initial take, and then we can open it up for broader discussion?
I would still like to host a virtual event for this school year. Number one, capitalizing on stimulus funds that maybe people are wanting to donate. Number two, for those who weren't able to participate in any events that they normally would donate to, perhaps the exposure for our school, and capitalizing as virtual is a big part of what we do at the moment for those who couldn't make it, or extended family, or those who are still cautious about interacting in group settings. So I would like to work with Frank and some of the teachers to see what projects we can incorporate in a recorded content or live content. The first proposal with Melissa, I think we need a lot more time to truly dedicate a good promotion of her effort. So I'd like to possibly push her out for next school year. And with the platform, both fundraisers were open to using different platforms and have access to some they've used. So I'll find out a little bit more about that with costs. But with the second, I think it's number 2 proposal with Mary Lynn, I thought she went over and above to customize a proposal for us using a lot of the things we discussed, and did her own research. She actually made it on campus and toured to see the space. I didn't get to see her. I was volunteering that day, so I didn't interact with her. But that just, again, showed a lot of dedication and commitment to our school, and that she has just a one flat fee. Like, I just can't imagine us not even raising enough to incorporate her cost and to be able to just see where the community is and what we can do. Because we certainly want to incorporate so much more in the school, and we've been able to be saved by the ESSER funds, but we don't want to run a deficit, and we definitely want to do so much more for our teachers and our students and our community. So it would be nice to get a little more of a cushion and springboard to other great things. So I'm advocating for Mary Lynn to do something with recorded content on a virtual basis. I don't think hybrid, we can muster that up with the amount of time that we have. I do have permission to record the Maypole event, so again, we can incorporate parents who aren't able to attend, or again, cautious about attending, and reach extended family.
Thank you, Danielle. That was a nice summary of each of our options. And thank you again for taking the lead on talking to each of these folks and getting these options in front of us. Other thoughts on each of these?
Danielle, you were talking about Mary. Is that the collaborative event management?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that was the one that I felt like was the most specific, and I wasn't searching for information where I was like, I don't have any information here. Like, I don't know what they're saying. I don't know what we pay. I don't know. It was kind of bare bones with some of these proposals. But so I like that this was detailed and specific, and even gave us, I mean, kind of, credentials, and that I've done events for this person and this person and this person, which it's always good to have reference context. But that one spoke to me the most as well. I felt like it had some good ideas that weren't too specific, but still felt very applicable for who we are and what we are as a community. And I like that we had options in terms of, you can have one person there to host the event, or you can also add staff. So it really gave us some specific options. And then we can figure that out as we go. But that one spoke to me the most as well.
Other thoughts?
I move to make a motion that we agree to hire Ms. Mary Lynn, have Frank sign her contract and proposal date of May 1st for a virtual event fundraiser.
I think let's hold off on that for just a second, Danielle. Let's just. It seemed like Dan maybe was taking a look at each of these and was about to say something. I don't want to cut off the conversation too soon.
I just went in for the dead silence.
Yeah. So I was also impressed with Mary Lynn and collaborating with event management, and it seemed very tailored to us. My concern at this point is it's now April 7th and May 1st is not far away. You know, I'm sure she can be creative and figure out a way to, maybe it's in early May, something, or rather than exactly on May 1st, which is a Saturday anyway. Although that would be a good time to have a festival that's, or an event that's not on a school day that people could attend. It's not a work day for many people. I was a little concerned there's not like a specific target fundraiser amount or something like that. We're just kind of seeing what she can do and then hoping for the best, which was the only knock I had against her. Whereas Abundance Journey and Melissa Sutton, she seemed to have a target of 130,000 in 6 months and seemed to have a plan how to get there over 6 months of doing work, which was pretty appealing. That said, I don't necessarily think these are mutually exclusive options. But, maybe we just wait a couple months before we hire Melissa and she can take us through the school year, like you were saying, Danielle. And let's do this other one by the end of the school year.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. Dan, what are you thinking?
I agree with all that. I was thinking that they're not mutually exclusive as well. I also liked Marilyn's proposal and but I didn't feel that they were like in the same realm exactly, like you're saying. So, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Mr. Tanner, any thoughts?
I appreciate Mary Lynn, and I know that we need money for the school and to build a community, and I'm all for that. I am, however, going to advocate for funds for the education of the children, and I am not comfortable at this point setting money aside that should be going to school needs.
You cut out, Mr. Tanner. I'm not sure you can still hear us.
Lost you.
We lost you at setting aside money when there are otherwise specific educational needs.
Cool.
Mr. Tanner, are you able to repeat that? You cut out.
Like we're having some internet issues here. Mr. Tanner, are you able to hear us? Let me send him a text message quick.
he's on pause. Sometimes we have to give a little to get a lot back in return.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Danielle. This is something I would anticipate would more than pay for itself. And I mean, we've just got to have a fundraising. We need to have probably multiple events per year where we're doing some systematic fundraising. I think that just needs to be part of our culture because we need it. You know, we just don't get enough funds from the state. Like you said, we've got, you know, a windfall in many ways through the ESSER fund, through the PPP funds that we got this year. But, you know, that's the one-time things that we need to have a going forward plan. How is that money going to be raised when it's not coming from those types of things? So, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say in all of the proposals too, I think Mary Lynn's amount was the smallest amount. It was less than $1,000 for the event. If we don't choose to have staff, and we have such a strong community, if we choose not to have that, I think we'd be fine doing that. So if we raise money, and I'm sure at any event we'll raise more than than that fee, it's worth it. Like you said, Gregory, it'll pay for itself, and then hopefully that will, you know, have a snowball effect, and we can move from there.
Mr. Tanner said his internet is cutting in and out, but so, well, I think we got the point he was trying to make in the event. So, all right, with that said, Danielle, why don't you make your motion?
What did I say? Can we play that back?
I can read it to you as close as I got it. I move to make a motion to hire Mary Lynn for a May 1st virtual fundraiser.
That sounds great. Thank you, April.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? It's like Mr. Tanner's internet is cutting in and out. I think based on his comment earlier, we can. Mr. Tanner, are you opposed to that motion?
No, I just had a question, and that is,
You're back.
so I apologize. I'm very sorry about that. It just goes out for no reason, and I don't know. But anyway, so we hire her. This is a one-time hire for May 1st.
Yes.
And nothing beyond that. It's just, we just want to see what she can do, so we're hiring her for May 1st, and that's the end of the contract.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you caught the motion based on when your internet was out, but Danielle moved to hire Mary Lynn to do this May 1st event. The other four of us voted in favor of that, and then your screen was frozen at the time. So what's your vote on that?
I vote for it.
Very good. All right, the motion carries then unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so Danielle, do you want to take the lead on reaching out to Mary Lynn and loop in Frank and get this running and off the ground?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. All right. And the next thing on our agenda was talking about air filtration system options. We had a teacher send us some contact information, and her husband helps coordinate these types of government grants for air filtration systems. And Frank reached out to him and is trying to coordinate that process. And this would be something that would be free to the school, I believe. It's truly a grant. But there's, as you might expect, there is a significant backlog of demand for these systems. So we're just waiting to hear more. Any other news on that front, Frank? Or
No, just that I would thank our teacher, Tammy Lopez. Her husband actually works for a company that does this, and she got me his email, and I was able to talk to him on the phone, and he led me to the portal that I filled out a detailed application and sent it in. And I asked things like, okay, when will I hear? And he said, well, it'll take a couple of weeks. And it's been a couple of weeks now, because I think she contacted you first, right, Greg? And
Yeah.
then you reminded me. And I pretty much have coffee with Tammy every morning. She's the first teacher in the building there. And so I said to her that next morning, hey, I heard. And she goes, oh, yeah. So that's when she set it up for me. And he was very nice in helping us. But I just have no information back yet, other than we did complete the application and we're in the queue, if you can call it that. And it's a totally free program, and it is a reputable air filter system.
Great. And do you know any of the details of what kind of system it is, or are we too early in the process?
That's part of what they're supposed to send me, because there's even choices for us to make. But I haven't received anything back yet. I'm waiting for that. I know it's a cart that sits in the corner, like the pictures you see of the other ones. It looks like a small refrigerator, like a mini fridge, and it sits in the corner. Because I've seen the pictures of it, but I have not seen the specs, how many cubic feet, how much air, that I have not seen.
Got it. All right. Well, we will wait to hear more. But free air filters, you can't really go wrong there.
Nope.
All right. Anything else on budget, cash flow, financial matters for the school? No. Okay. So Frank, obviously we got your report. Anything you want to highlight or anything else you want to tell us about? Or
Yes.
need our help with?
Testing. Everyone wants to know how it's going. It was a good first week. Tomorrow is the science test portion. And Deb Paolo, again, kudos to her. But I did see Larry Grossenbacher was on this call a minute ago, and I need to make sure I thank him again. He's a parent of 2 sets of twins for us in 7th grade and 5th grade. And Larry is the gentleman who's helping us put together the virtual tour. He stopped doing that to help us with the computers. He pretty much scraped the computers clean and loaded them with the information to get to the testing site. He's been there all week this week, just in case a glitch happens. He's taken his day and come down in the morning to make sure we start off well and end well. And I just can't thank him enough. He just has been a great peace of mind for us and given us a lot of his time and effort. And we are very appreciative to Mr. Grossenbacher.
That's excellent. Thank you on behalf of the board.
Otherwise, testing went pretty smoothly. A couple simple glitches, but really, we have found that a lot of parents who were on remote, brought their children to test and then took them home after the test. Some decided to stay. And that's okay. They could do whichever plan they wanted. And of course, we did have some parents say, I'm going to invoke my right to not take the test at all. And they are allowed to do that. And they did. That was a small percentage, though.
Well, glad to hear that overall that's going smoothly and well. I know that's a lot of anxiety and inducing stuff for the students, especially, and the staff as well. It's not fun for anybody, really. So thanks for coordinating a smooth operation as we could hope for on that front.
Thank you to the teachers, too. This is tough on them. It always is, because everything has to be just perfect in the state's eyes. But they did it. They're helping each other out. They're in each other's classrooms. And we're just pleased that it's going nicely right now. So.
All right. So Dan pointed out to me by text that there are a couple of people who raised their hands in our participant list. So typically, this is just a meeting among the board members and people that we invite into the meeting on the topics that are listed in the agenda. So that said, board members are permitted to invite members of the public to speak on matters if they think it would be relevant or helpful to the discussion. So I can see now that at least one person has their hand raised in the audience, and another person had theirs raised momentarily. So Dan, we can invite people into the discussion. This, to me, this was more of a reporting about, what was going on. Certainly, I'm not opposed to it. I'm going to leave it to your discretion.
If we can invite people, I wouldn't have a problem. Miss Deb has her hand raised, and we could have her come into the meeting. I'm fine with that, inviting her in to speak.
Sure. All right, so we'll invite Ms. Deb in to speak.
Maybe it was accidental.
Maybe Ms. Deb, are you still with us?
Her mic is muted.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe it was accidental. All right. All right. So I disabled talking for her since it seems like that may have been an accident.
Okay.
All right. And the other person has lowered their hand, and I'm being specifically oblique about who these people are because, if you typically sign into the meeting or register your attendance, I don't want to call anyone out necessarily in a public meeting. So that said, Frank, anything else that you wanted to bring to our attention before we move on?
No, I don't think there was. No, I would tell you we're down to 50 students who are still on remote, and every day a couple more trickle in. And of course, we really would like kids to come back. We encourage that. So that's a good thing.
Great. All right. Well, let's move on to COVID-19. I haven't really heard anything, and since the state changed the rules about what we need to do, anything we need to talk about on COVID-19 from your perspective, Frank, or from any of the board members?
we're continuing the day porter position and cleaning, and we're also cleaning at night. I see kids every morning coming on campus with their masks on, and I see kids washing their hands every morning. I see kids at lunch or recess. They're allowed to take their mask off for a little bit and take a break, but then they put it right back on. It hasn't been a situation that I'm concerned that 50 kids sitting 2 feet from each other all have their masks off. No, I'm not overly concerned right now. I believe we are following our protocols to the best we can. Occasionally, someone forgets a mask and comes to the front office, and we have a stack there to give out. That's all. I don't have anything else on it.
I see on our agenda, I did put on there that we would look at the DHS benchmarks. And so there, for Maricopa County, we are still, they call it substantial transmission, which is based on 2 different factors. The first is cases per 100,000 individuals. We're currently sitting at 62 cases per 100,000 individuals for the week of March 21st, which is significantly better than it was just a few weeks ago. And then the case positivity is down to 3.7%. So that is considered a very low positivity. So I think we're well positioned to finish out the year in our current hybrid learning model, and barring some dramatic change of events. Or the governor changing his mind about the order. All right, so with that said, take us to our last agenda item. We need to approve our minutes from the last meeting, and that was on March 17th. Is that right, April? Okay. So I will move to approve the minutes of our March 17th, 2021 meeting. Mr. Tanner seconds. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor? That's unanimous. All right. So that brings us to the board applications. So I was very pleased to see that we had, I think, 5 applications at the end of the day. Is that right, April, or was it 4? They sort of, several trickled in at the last minute, and it was good to see.
I think you're right, but let me check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5.
5.
Sorry, I had to scroll.
No worries. So typically, before we move to this meeting every couple of weeks schedule, in the past we would interview people, in the middle of April once, and then elect people to the board at the meeting in May, when we had meetings once a month. But now we have a lot more meetings than we used to. So we've got some flexibility on when we do this timeline for interviewing. So we've got meetings. So April 21st is our next one. So I think in the interest of moving this along, it would be good to do interviews then, although that's also typically when we have another budget meeting that, but we seem to be moving through these agendas pretty quickly lately, so I'm not too worried about getting bogged down in other stuff while we do the interviews. So I think we do the interviews on April 21st, and then at the next board meeting, which would be May 5th, we would then ask any follow-up questions of the candidates and take a vote and elect people to the board. So that would be the process, unless anybody has other thoughts and would like to propose a different timeline.
I'm fine with. Sorry, go ahead, Danielle.
No, I was just saying Cinco de Mayo, huh?
Oh,
Let's see. Let me just double check those dates. Yeah. It is currently scheduled for Cinco de Mayo.
The last one was St. Patty's Day.
Yeah.
I don't usually perform on St. Patty's Day, but I usually perform on Cinco de Mayo.
you should do both. I'll come to both.
Higher dance group will be there.
I didn't realize you did performances, Danielle.
In a ballet folklorico group and a mariachi group.
Oh. Okay. Well.
I may be able to work something out.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to miss that one if we're interviewing candidates.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other thing we could do is just split it up by a month, like we've done in the past, and interview them the initial round on April 21st, and then skip a meeting, and then vote on them on May 21st, or May 19th, sorry.
I like the sooner than later.
What was that?
I like the sooner than later.
Oh, okay. Well, if you'd prefer to do it on May 5th, then we'll go ahead and do it then.
How's everyone else's schedule?
Terrible. That works. That works for me.
Yeah, same.
My only thought was typically you meet with all the board applicants, so just figuring out your schedule to be able to fit in that meeting. But that's up to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's on my personal agenda to reach out to them after this meeting and try and have those one-on-one calls. But
if we're still virtual, I'm sure I can work something out. We'll be fine.
Yeah, I don't see us having virtual meetings, before May 5th. All right, so let's stick with that then. We'll do the first round of interviews at our next meeting, April 21st. Then we'll do the elections on May 5th. All right. I will reach out and let all of our candidates know. And I will say I'm not only pleased to see the number, but of the quality of candidates that we got as well. These are people who have been longtime members of the community, have contributed significantly in many ways, and I think have a lot to offer. So it's very good to see that this many people are interested in helping at this caliber of individual as well. All right. So the last thing, April, you pointed out that to me the other day that we only have board meetings scheduled through the end of May. And
I said May, but it's through June.
Through June, yeah.
And then everything else after that are just tentative dates that I put in there based on what we've been doing. But we have discussed the possibility of maybe changing it from 2 meetings a month to 1 meeting a month and reverting back to that. So we just need to figure out what we want to do moving forward.
Yeah. So typically we've made the schedule for each fiscal year, at least while I've been on the board. So that's why it stops with that second meeting of June. So you know, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I really like having meetings every other week because I feel like we move through stuff pretty quick, and then it's a relatively short meeting instead of a 4-hour meeting like we had in the past. I'd rather do that twice, 2-hour meetings or 2 1.5-hour meetings than 1 4-hour meeting for my personal sanity. And I also think it helps us, be more present about what's actually going on at the school. But that said, it is more days per month where you have to be somewhere sitting in a chair and talking. So I'm open to going back to once a month because these agendas have been fairly light for the last few times now, and I think we could still move pretty quickly through a number of things and potentially not make it too long. But look forward to what are your thoughts?
I think the community also probably appreciates the shorter meetings to be able to keep in touch, and it's more digestible, I feel, often. I remember listening to 4-hour meetings, and it was rough.
Yeah. I don't think there's any other word for it, really. Well, there are other words, but none are pretty.
I don't know, do we feel like there's like we're losing? I know that the multiple days is somewhat harder, but are we waste? There's not a lot of repeated process in the meetings, right? Like, I mean, that's not true. Frank has to put together that thing twice, his report twice as often, right? Or would that be?
Yeah, that's another option. Frank, is it burdensome on you to generate those reports twice a month? Oh, you just muted yourself.
You skip it every other meeting?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You could just do it once a month. Like anything
Not
that's
at all. Very easy. I don't have a problem doing that at all.
Okay. Cool.
Well, then, Mr. Tanner, what are your thoughts?
Yes,
you've spent a lot of time doing school stuff. So what is this like for you?
I think until we're really on the other side of COVID-19, I think we really have to go every other week as we've been doing. I know it's more work, but it's such that we have to have this type of commitment. So I agree with every other month. We may want to push it back to once a month, but I just don't see it for right now.
Yeah, we've been able to respond to things a lot more quickly than we have in the past. And we need that right now. All right. Well, it sounds like we have got a consensus on keeping it every other week. So April, can you take a stab at a schedule for us for the next fiscal year, and we can.
You want something condensed, like a 1-page, just all the dates on there?
Yep.
Okay, got it. I'll have that for the next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, that brings us to the end. Mr. Tanner, would you mind reading the closing verse this evening?
Yes, thank you for that. Let me get to it here. Yeah. The most important tasks for humankind today and in the future is that we should learn to live together and understand one another. If this human fellowship is not achieved, all talk of development is empty. And that is by Dr. Snyder.
Thank you. Oh, I will move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor? All right. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for your time and for sharing this evening with us. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Night, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you. Good night.